Okay, we're starting on Beis, Amud Beis on the top. First words on the Amud. Even Baal Chalemis, that means the master of dreams, right? The master dream interpreter. He's very good at interpreting dreams. Even if he says to a person, tomorrow he's going to die. Even if someone's death seems to be imminent, he should still daven for mercy from Hashem. Still fear Hashem, even if the Baal Chalemis says that there's no reason to. Miyada doesn't say there's no reason to, but it appears on the surface there's no reason to. Miyada, immediately following that, the pasuk says, that Cheskiyah should face the door, and he davens to Hashem. Right? We already mentioned that this pasuk was a raya that one should daven next to a wall. So, Mike here, why does it mention a wall here? From the depths of his heart, he davened from the depths of his heart. No, he was talking about matters of a wall. He was talking about a story that concerned the wall. What was the story? So Amar Lefanav, he said in front of him, Elisha needed a place to stay, and the Shunamis woman lended a place to stay for Elisha, and not only that, but she created a wall in order to make a separate room for Elisha to stay in. And as reward for this, Hashem, when her son was sick, she revived her son. Hashem revived her son. So Abiyava, my father's father, my father's father, right? He covered the whole heichel with the gold and silver. Certainly, you should revive him and help him get healed, right? If you did it to a little kid, just for making one wall, he surrounded the whole heichel with gold and silver. Certainly, he deserves to be revived. What does it mean? What does it mean? Good in your eyes, I shall do. We mentioned this a couple times already, that he connected Gal Yisrael to Tefillah. Reb Levi says he hid the Sefer Refuis, the book of remedies. So why did he hide the book of remedies? Seems to be a good thing, right? It's a book that has remedies in it. That would seem to be a gavaldic thing. Don't hide it. Answer is because he was scared that if people had this, they would rely on the book of remedies and they wouldn't daven to Hashem. They'd be like, don't worry, I have this book. Whatever remedies it says in here, that'll make me feel better. And they wouldn't feel the need to daven to Hashem. The Rambam opposed this because he's like, wait a second. So let's say you have food. You have food. So we're going to hide food from people because we want them to daven for Hashem so that Hashem will give them food. No, that's crazy. People have food. They should use the food. So to here, if people had a book of remedies, they should use the book. So the Rambam says it must be that there were the remedies in the book weren't so reliable, so they didn't want people to rely on them. It wasn't that they were scared people weren't going to daven to Hashem. Just the remedies weren't so reliable. Weiter. Tanu Rabbanan, Shisha Dvarim Cheskiyah HaMelech. 6 things that Cheskiyah HaMelech did. Al Gimel Hayduloi, Al Gimel Loi Hayduloi. On 3 things the Chachamim agreed with the way he acted, on 3 things they did not. What are the 6 things? So the 3 things, Al Gimel Hayduloi, what are the 3 things they agreed with him? Number 1, Gana Sefer Refuis. Like we said, he's hid the Sefer Refuis. He hid the book of remedies. And they agreed. They concurred with his action. Number 2, he grinded, one of the 2, the copper serpent that Moshe Rabbeinu had. And they agreed with what he did. Number 3, he rolled the bones of his father on a bed of ropes, meaning he gave him a proper burial. Even though he was a Rasha, he still nonetheless gave him a proper burial. And the Chacham agreed with this that he did. On 3 things they didn't agree with him. Sasami Gichain. He stuffed up the waters of Gichain. And they did not agree with him doing this. He cut off the doors of the Heichel. And he sent them to the king of Ashur. They didn't agree with him. In Nisan he made it a leap year. Meaning what happened? It was Nisan, and just like this year was a leap year, right? He made Adar Beis. So a Nisan already started, and he made an Adar Beis. So he made it a leap year in Nisan after you weren't allowed to make it a leap year anymore. So they didn't agree with this, right? Because it was too late to make a leap year. Now he's going to decide that they're going to make it a leap year. There was a reason why he did it. Obviously, it's a whole story. But anyway, he did it, and he shouldn't have done it. What are you talking about? He made it a leap year when it wasn't a leap year? Cheskiyah didn't know the pasuk that says he didn't know the pasuk that this is Nisan and there's no other Nisan, that you can't make another Nisan. He didn't know that pasuk. Where says no? Of course he knew the pasuk. El Tabed Shmuel, but he made a mistake in interpreting what Shmuel said. Shmuel's statement was the Amar Shmuel. Ein ma'virin es hashana b'yoyim shloishim shel Adar hayil v'roy l'kvay Nisan. Meaning, Sarah v'hayil v'roy loy amrin. Meaning, let's say it's the 30th day of Adar, right? So we know that some months have 29 days, some months have 30 days. So because it's the 30th day of Adar, theoretically it could be Nisan right now, because maybe it's only 29-day month. So he thought, since in reality it's still Adar, so I can still make it a leap year, because Nisan hasn't started yet. But Shmuel said, no, since theoretically it could be Nisan today, so you're not allowed to make it another Nisan. You could only, first after the 29th day, it's too late already. Because at that point, you have potential for it to be Nisan. And once Nisan can potentially start, even if it hasn't started in reality, you can't make it a leap year anymore. Givaldik. Anyone who depends on his own merit will then have to depend on others' merits. And anyone who depends on the shas of others then the shas of himself will be accounted for. Moshe Rabbeinu was dependent on the shas of others. How do we know that? Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, do this for Klal Yisrael, not for my merit, not in the merit of me, but for the merit of Avram, and the merit of Yitzchak, and the merit of your servants. Don't do it for my merit. He was being humble, right? He was saying, I don't have any merit, they have merit. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So therefore Hashem said, I'll make it dependent on your schos. So therefore we see Moshe Rabbeinu was humble, and he didn't depend on his own schosim, so Hashem said, you know what? I'll save them in your schos. Because you were humble and you didn't act with gaiva, I'll save them in your schos. On the other hand, Chizkiyahu depended on his own zechus. Because it says, remember that which I acted, that way which I acted in front of you. So therefore he's saying, because I did this gewaldige thing, therefore you should save me. So what did Hashem do as a result? He said, you're going to depend on your own merit, I'm going to make you depend on others, on other people's merit. It says, I did this for the sake of David. I didn't do it for the sake of you. I did it for the sake of David. We see that because Chizkiyahu davened that he has this great merit, so I should earn this salvation in that merit. Hashem said, no, I'm going to do it in someone else's merit, because it's a hardy way of looking at things. What does it mean? What does this pasuk mean? Even if Hashem makes peace, there could still be bitterness in it. There could still be bitterness in it, because yes, here Chizkiyahu was saved. Ultimately, the desired result did happen, but it wasn't through his zechus, it was through someone else's zechus, because he was being hardy and relying on his own zechus. Beautiful. Weiter in the pasuk that we mentioned before, Nasa na Aliyas Kir Ketana. So we said before, right, that there was a Shunamis woman that Yeshaya was visiting, and she created a separate room for him so that he could stay there, right? So let's just expound upon that story. Rav Shmuel have different interpretations of this. Chadamar Aliyah Perua Haisa Vikiyura. So one holds that there was an attic, and she simply put a roof over the attic so that it was a livable area. And the second one holds, no, there was only one room in the entire house, and she put a wall in the middle of the room so that there was a separate room for him to stay. Second one seems a little more selfless, right? Because they were giving up their own living space for him, which is an incredible level, obviously. So that makes sense according to the one that says it was an achsadra, meaning it was a guest room. Because it was a guest room, meaning it wasn't a separate room in reality. They just put a wall and made it a separate room. They created a separate room. But the one that holds it's an attic, my kier shekira. What do you mean they roofed it? They didn't have to roof it. The roof was already there. They just had to put a separate wall. Right? So my kier shekiyura. So the answer is that it just means no. The wall is referring here to the roof, meaning it was just an aliyah, it was just an attic, but they had to put a roof on it. Comes from the same word as kier. So that makes sense according to the one that says aliyah, because we said they had to roof the attic. Because it says aliyas. But according to the one that says achsadra, my aliyas. Why does the pasuk say there was an attic? If you're going to say they just added another room, why did you say there was an attic? Gemara says me'ula shebabatim, because that's the best of houses. The best is staying in their room. That's the best level of. That's the best level, to stay in their room, right? That's because it's already created. That is a part of the actual house. Weiter v'nashim loy sham mita v'nasim loy sham mita v'shulchan v'kisei menorah, and they put on his bed. They were good hosts, and she was a good hostess, and she put on his bed a table and a chair and a menorah. She gave him everything he needed. If someone goes to someone's house and they want to benefit from all the gifts that the host gives them, they can do that, no problem. Just like Elisha did. That's what Elisha did. He benefited from all the gifts that the host gave him, and it was no problem. But if you want to be, you don't want to be so materialistic, and you don't want to benefit from all these gifts. You want to be like, I don't need these gifts. And Al Yahana, you don't have to do that either. You can do whatever you want. Right, it's one of those rare cases in the Gemara. The Gemara says, do whatever you want, right? Shmuel Aramasi, just like Shmuel Aramasi, Shmuel Aramasi, wherever he went, he brought all of his needs with him. He brought, if he needed a bed and sheets and blankets and everything he needed, he brought with him because he didn't want to take anything from the host. So either one can take from the host, or one doesn't have to if they don't want to. Okay, you have an option there. So this man was holy. Kadeshu, he was holy. Wow. From here, we learn that a woman recognizes the needs of a guest more than a man does. Right? A woman just has a sixth sense. Women in general, they have the sixth sense. They just know. They have an intuition. Kadeshu, what does Kadeshu mean? Where do we know that he was Kaddish? Where did she know that he was Kaddish? Meaning, we see from the pasuk that the hostess realized that he was a holy man. Right? When they were hosting him, they realized he was a holy man. Where did she know that he was holy? What gave this away? Rav Shmuel. Chad Amar. So there were two different ways that she knew. Chad Amar Shalai Ra'asa Zavav Ayver Shulchanai. One says that because there were no flies surrounding him. And one says she never saw carry on his sheets, so therefore she knew that he was holy. Allah Kadeshu Amar Rabbi Chanina, who Kadeshu Mashrisai Einai Kadesh. Only he was holy, right? But his attendant, Gechazi, was not holy, right? Who Kaddish, only he was holy, but Mishrasai ain't a Kaddish. But his attendant was not holy. Gechazi grabbed her. So he grabbed her in an inappropriate place. So therefore we see that Gechazi was not holy, but he was holy himself. What does this mean? Anyone who hosts a Talmud Chacham in his house is as if he brought a carbon tamid. Beautiful. Wow, that's obviously a big schus. I'm sorry, I just did that, right? A person should not daven in a high place. He should go to a low place in daven. How do we know that? One of the most famous kapitel Tehillim, from the depths I call out to Hashem. So one should daven from the depths in a lower place. A person should not daven on top of a chair or any other high place. Vispal and daven. So a person should not daven on a high place, but he should go to a low place, vispal and daven. Because high things, meaning gaiva, that's referring to gaiva, does not pass in front of Hashem. Tefillah of a humble person. Right? What's the problem with davening in a high place? Like I mentioned, it's haughty, it's gaivadik, and that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants to show that one is being humble in front of him. Mama Kim, coming from the depths, one's desperate. That's why we're calling out to Hashem. Beautiful. When we daven, this is a source right here. And when we davens, Shemona Esrei has to keep his feet together. Regel Yeshara. Right, that's why the Malachim. That's what the Malachim did. So that's why we do it. That's why we put our feet together during Shemona Esrei to act like Malachim. That's also why we lift our feet up during Kaddish, because that's what the Malachim say, and that's the way they acted. They would dance. So that's why we lift our feet up. Okay, we try to act like Malachim in certain instances. From Rabbi Yosef Chanina Mashum, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, also Yom Kippur. Right, we dress up in white. So different reasons to look like a Malach. Right, certain instances we try to resemble Malachim to a certain extent. What does the pasuk mean when it says Lai Seichlu Al Hadam? What does that mean? Famous halacha, one should not eat before they daven. And we learn it from this pasuk, right? So one should not eat before they daven for their blood, meaning daven for one's life, right? Anyone who eats and drinks and then davens, about him it is written, which is again referring to gaiva. So that's another form of gaiva. What's Hashem saying? After you involve yourself in eating food and in materialistic things, now you're going to be mekabel omach shemaim, you're going to accept the yoke of heaven? Don't do that. First accept the yoke of heaven, then you could, eat and drink. Obviously water and coffee, okay, there's different halachas about that, could be different, but just in general, eating shouldn't, that's the halacha the Gemara is trying to bring out. Eating shouldn't be done before davening in the morning. Rabbi Shua Amar Ad Gimel Shais. Back to the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah we stated that said, the second Mishnah in Shas, and we're actually going to get to the third Mishnah in Shas in just a minute here, which we'll probably leave for next time. It was a machlekes when the latest time to read Kriya Shema in the morning is. So Rabbi Shua says you have until 3 hours into the day. And that is how we paskin, right? You have until 3 hours, right? One opinion is nates. That'd be quite early, right? Everyone would have to get up quite early in order to say Kriya Shema by the time. But since we hold like Rabbi Shua, it's a few hours later, so we have a little more time. Just a few more lines. So then we said, if let's say Kriya Shema, the time for Kriya Shema passes, and let's say someone reads Kriya Shema anyway, should they do that or not? Like if the time passes, should they do it? So the Gemara says yes. The Mishnah says yes. Why? Because it's like reading Torah, it's like learning Torah, so there's nothing wrong with it. Great Kriya Shema is just straight psukim from the Torah. As long as you don't say Yaitzir, meaning as long as you don't say the brachas of Kriya Shema, right? Just say Kriya Shema itself, because that's Torah. The brachas are not Torah. Meisvei, the Gemara asks, "Hakar mikan ve'elech lai hefsid ka'adam shukar b'Torah av mevaruch l'shtayim l'fnei v'achzachara." Tiyufta rechesed tiyufta, right? Meaning, what do you mean? You shouldn't read the brachas, the brachas Kriya Shema. We have a brisa that says exactly the opposite. That says you should, in fact, read the brachas. So which one is it? Should you or should you not? So what does it mean you won't lose out? It means you won't lose out on the brachas. So we have a brisa that says the contrary. Better, greater is one who reads Kriya Shema in its proper time. That is even greater than learning Torah. Wow, we don't often say things are greater than learning Torah, but this is one of them. Midigatani. Why? How do we know this? How do we know this incredible statement by the Gemara? How do we know this? Midigatani, from the fact that the Mishnah said, that one who reads after this man of Kriya Shema won't lose out, that it's ka'adim, that it's like learning Torah, right? Meaning, from the fact that we know that reading Kriya Shema in its proper time is obviously the best thing to do. From the fact that we say that one won't lose out, that Lashon sounds like, okay, he won't lose out, but be'etzim, the best time is to still do it before this man, right? Because afterwards it's just like Stam learning Torah. Beforehand is like a greater level of learning Torah. So we see that reading Kriya Shema in its time is even better than learning Torah, because not only are you learning Torah, because the words of Kriya Shema are straight from the Torah, but you're doing it in its proper time. Okay, beautiful. Since we have a Mishnah, we'll stop there, and Be'ez Hashem, we'll get to that next time. We'll get to the third Mishnah in Shas.